All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we're getting ready to take a big transition from our story of mortgages. As we move into chapters 9, 11, and 12, we're going to move into commercial property investment analysis. And so I wanted to set that up with a little format called the Real Estate Pro Forma to use as a foundation for us as we go through these next 3 chapters. All right, so we'll run through this thing with an example, and we'll utilize it again as we think about how each of the other components that are going to come to play in these chapters feed into the final answer. Basically, is this property of interest to us? And so let's start with a really simple little example. In this example, let's just say you and I are looking at an apartment building or a multifamily building, and we're thinking about buying it. All right, so we're going to make a purchase, and we're kind of interested in knowing, is this thing going to generate any cash flow for us in the future? Is it worth purchasing? And also, what does it give to us in our pocket? And what is it that we actually want to pay for it? What are we willing to pay for it? So we're going to do a little analysis. And we start with a couple of things. If you were in macroeconomics in undergrad, it'll remind you of the money supply story where there's a series of acronyms and abbreviations that get us to our answer. And we're going to start with this one here. PGI stands for potential gross income. That's basically the income that we're going to receive if the facility is completely rented for 365 days and nobody leaves, there's no vacancy whatsoever. And we're going to project that for this particular exercise at $100,000. Okay? So then the next thing that we have to think about is this little relationship, this thing called V&C, which stands for vacancy and collection. So as I said, PGI is potential gross income, but in reality, there are very few opportunities that we're going to be able to invest in. They're going to have 100% occupancy the whole time. And so there's going to be some issues where folks are going to leave, and there may be some issues along the way, especially in the context of a multifamily, where we may have some collection issues, some possibilities where folks don't pay. And we're going to estimate that for now at 5%, all right? So that becomes a deduction from our potential gross income. So right now we're at PGI minus V&C. And that equals EGI, or in simple terms, effective gross income. So that's the income after vacancy and collection. And of course, it's fairly obvious. As you can see, we're sitting at $95,000. So the next thing we have to think about if we're going to buy this thing is we're going to have some expenses, right? So we're going to take those away from this EGI. I'm just going to denote those as OE, and they're referred to as operating expenses. And those are the expenses associated specifically with owning and operating a piece of real estate. So for example, things like property taxes, insurance, repairs and maintenance, lawn, snow removal, etc. What they don't involve are things associated with expenses relative to the investor. So the investor's tax effects, the tax costs associated with that. Those aren't included, just the expenses associated with operating the building. And based on experience, and a little bit of an estimate here, we'll say that those are going to run about 10%, and I'm referring to 10% of this EGI, okay? So that's $9,500. And that gives us this number, $85,500. And that number is NOI. That's net operating income. And net operating income is the holy grail of real estate pro forma analysis. It gets us to an estimate of what this place will be worth to you and I by virtue of this simple little relationship. V equals NOI over R. And in this environment, V equals value. NOI is, as we said, the net operating income. An important component, it has a sub 1. And the reason why, and the V is a 0, the reason why is because you and I are interested in knowing what we want to pay for it today. And of course, what we want to know what we're willing to pay for it is going to be based on the income that it's going to make in the future. Although the information in the past is valuable to get us an idea of how to project forward, the reality is what we're going to make in the future is what's important to us. And so we're projecting that NOI a year forward. So all these numbers that I'm illustrating here are based on what you and I think this thing's going to generate in operating income in year 1, as when we own it. And this R then stands for what is referred to as a cap rate. And if you've never heard this phrase before, be patient and we'll get to it when we get into the overheads in the slides. So for now, let's assume that this cap rate, this R, is 6%, okay? All I have to do then is take that simple relationship, that 85.5, and divide it by the 6%. And that gives me an estimate of V. That estimate of V then, in this case, is the 142500. And so what that's telling us is if this is a legitimate estimate and forecast for what this property is going to generate over the course of the next 12 months, our willingness to pay suggests that we should be willing to offer $1,425,000. That's the operating component of our pro forma from the standpoint of just looking at the real estate enterprise itself. When we come back and look at this board again, what we're going to do is extend that to think about what the relationship is and the cash flow generating opportunities are for the individual investor themselves. And now we'll get into the slides from chapters 9, 11, and 12 as we expand into loading up the new information, ratios, and other ways of thinking about how we can make money and generate profit in real estate. See you there.